Okay, so I think we're ready to rock and roll here for our first reader tonight. Just so you know, I'll split the money in half. The way I do this is I've already started a checking account for the Raleigh Right to Publish group. We're eventually going to file for nonprofit status. We've made it up to $90 through doing events like this, so we've got a little bit of money in the coffers for the Raleigh Right to Publish group. But I do want to make it clear what we'll do is split the money. I'm going to go count this up while you guys are reading and then split it half and half. The winner will get half of the money, and then the rest of the money goes to the Raleigh Right to Publish group. So just so that that's perfectly clear. Again, my name is Stacy Cochran. If you've got any questions afterwards, I'd love to answer some of those. But without further ado, let's pick one winner here tonight, or pick one reader here, I guess. And also, just so you know, I'll shout out 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, if you do go that long, I'll say 10 minutes. You've got 1 minute at that point to wrap things up, or we'll have a bouncer come up here and kick you off the stage. What was it, the Gong Show, where they used to have the hook that would come out and grab people? All right, our first reader tonight is going to be, looks like Bernie Brown, or Bernice Brown.
I'm not used to using a mic, so. Hello, is that okay? Okay. This is a short story entitled Fast and Friendly. Marilyn, the clerk at the Fast and Friendly convenience store, looked out at the shadowy parking lot. The landlord still hadn't fixed that light. The dark parking lot compounded her fears of working at night, and you could barely see the sign, the imbecilic smiley face, in profile no less, that topped the cheap store. Now, to make matters worse, George, her relief, just called to say he'd be late, again, and she was coming down with a cold. Her throat burned and her sinuses were closing up fast. Achoo! A hip-hop wannabe with swagger to match crossed the parking lot. Marilyn looked suspiciously at his junker car in the gloom near the burned-out light. The door dinged as he entered, glaring at her. Marilyn kept a careful watch on the surveillance camera as the young man scanned the shelves, probably deciding when he's going to shoplift. Marilyn was ashamed of her cynicism. It certainly went counter to the name of the place. Darian felt hostile, all right, but his mood had nothing to do with any ill intent he had for Marilyn or the store. He was mad at his car. Damn piece of junk, leaking oil all over the place. Darian had stopped at the Fast and Friendly, or rather his car had coasted to a smelly stop there, just in time to buy a quart, fill up, and maybe make it home. He searched the shelves. Where was that stuff? He finally spied it at the back, on the bottom. He squatted to retrieve a quart, out of range of the surveillance screen. The bell dinged again. Marilyn looked sympathetically at her newest customer, a little old thing dressed in a pink sweatsuit. She carried a huge imitation leopard purse, wore dilapidated sneakers that flopped, and sported a Carolina baseball cap on her scraggly hair. All combined to look both comical and defenseless. Honey, you shouldn't be out alone at night. Achoo! Marilyn snatched a tissue. The lady gave her a dirty look, for the sneeze probably, grunted and shrugged. She picked a chapstick off the display and slapped it on the counter. Marilyn jiggled the cash register. Oh, great, now it's going to be difficult. The drawer stuck sometimes. Get that thing open and give me the money. Marilyn's gaze traveled from the drawer to the chapstick on the counter to the woman's chest where the barrel of a very long, very ugly gun pointed straight at her. Oh, shit. What do I do now? Maybe that worthless George will arrive in time to actually be useful for once. And apropos of nothing, she sneezed again. Achoo! Darian, hidden from the surveillance, squatted just feet away. His eyes widened when he heard Pink Lady demand the money. With huge luck, he saw something on the shelf above the motor oil. Multitask tool with knife and light. That's what it said on a box. Can openers with too much ambition. That's what they look like. For a fleeting moment, Darian wished he had joined the neighborhood gang. Then at least he'd know what to do with this inflated can opener at a moment like this. Maybe somebody else would come in and save him from having to be heroic. Ever so carefully, Darian lifted a tool from the box. He could hear Marilyn struggling with the recalcitrant drawer. Hurry up, lady. I don't want to shoot this thing. What to do? Stab her in the leg? Ew. Poke her in the eye? Worse. He didn't have all night. Darian needed to do something now. In the end, he just made a big old lunge with the clumsy knife leading the attack. Darian sent his 200 pounds hurtling crazily at the diminutive thief. She stumbled. The gun catapulted from her hand and landed on the cash register with enough force to send the stubborn drawer flying open. Quarters and dollar bills spilled out in a merry jingle. The gun went off with a shot that ricocheted around until it found a home in the surveillance screen. Glass tinkled down. Darian's heroic lunge had been the ultimate test for his beltless, overlarge, low-slung trousers. They failed. His momentum sent them shooting backwards down his bulky frame to stop at the impediment of his feet. His black round bottom, in all its glory, mooned the ceiling. Glass fragments pricked it like blown sand. Darian jerked and wriggled to escape the pain while keeping a stronghold on his squirming prey. Meanwhile, Marilyn made wild grabs for the wayward weapon. Like the bullet, the gun ricocheted on a path from the cash register to the glass window to deep under the service counter. Marilyn bent to retrieve it and whacked her head on the open door of the cash register, which, contrarily, now wouldn't close. Though the injury to her head blurred her outer vision, her thoughts grew crystal clear. She had judged these two customers solely on their appearance and been woefully mistaken. The hip-hop guy turned out to be her savior. The pitiful old woman was the threat. The truth depressed her. Marilyn just wanted to go home, and where the hell was George? Achoo! She moaned, grabbed the counter, and waited for her head to stop spinning. Low, muffled complaints came from somewhere under Darian's bulk. "Get off me, you stupid lug," followed by other less acceptable objections. On top of the little woman, Darian held his position. He grunted while trying to coax his trousers back up over his exposed hindquarters. Inwardly, he further cursed his traitorous car that put him in the middle of this mess. Amid this moaning, sneezing, complaining, tinkling, jingling, grunting, and self-accusation, the little bell over the door dinged again as someone entered the shop. "Hi," the newcomer announced cheerily. "Sorry I'm late. Did I miss anything?" It was George. Suddenly, the little shop was filled with activity. Two policemen arrived to assess the situation and take the pink lady away. They were followed by the owner scuffling his feet in the money and glass littering the floor. When Marilyn looked out in the parking lot, she saw a cherry picker rising high, its occupant replacing the lamp. Suddenly, the dismal place glowed, revealing a tawdry profusion of wrappers, cigarette butts, condoms, oil stains, dumpsters, ice chests, and gas pumps. Marilyn coughed and sniffed. After talking with the police, Darian approached the manager. "Sir, I still need a quart of oil to make it home." The manager looked with despair at the chaos and the useless cash register. He waved his hand dismissively. "Just take it. You've earned it." Darian gave his trousers a commanding tug and strode purposefully out the door. Marilyn looked at George, a question in her eyes. "Yeah, I pulled up and saw what was going down in here. I called the police and old Peterson and hung around to keep an eye on things. Crazy night, huh?" George, if you only knew. But at last he'd been good for something. He'd called the police. She gathered her belongings and announced with deep fatigue, "I'm going home." Marilyn glanced at the police car holding the little pink lady, who flipped her the bird in one last act of defiance before being hauled away. As Darian and Marilyn pulled out of the parking lot, the face on the Fast and Friendly sign beamed down. The yellow smiley, in its unlikely profile, grinned idiotically at their departures, forever oblivious to trash, theft, pain, unfaithful cars, head colds, exhaustion, and just plain bad luck. Then, when it was sure it was unobserved and would remain unrecorded in the annals of convenience store history, the immobile smiley face released its absurd profile. For the merest fraction of a moment, it faced fully front, showing both upturned sides of its semicircular mouth. And then, as if such daring required still further bravado, one of its oval eyes squeezed itself into the line of a coquettish wink. At that point, a monumental sneeze overtook it. Achoo! The whole minimalist drawing of its face compressed into zigzags and lightning flashes, and then, in slow-mo, returned to its bland and idiotic life in profile, reigning benignly over the parking lot kingdom of the fast and friendly convenience store.
So that was Bernie Brown. Very good job. Excellent. Let's go ahead and keep this rolling. We're going to do 6 readers. It is Bernie, right? Yes. Bernie Brown. And I'll repeat all these names towards the end, so when you want to place your vote, you can remember who to vote for. So the first reader was Bernie Brown. Let's see. And if I happen to pick Bernie's name, another thing that I should mention, if I pick her name again, we'll just go back into the pot. You can only read once. So if you guys were here for our last one, you remember we had one reader. I just kept pulling her name. I think she put like $30 worth of. All right, the next reader is Lori G.
The story I wrote is called The Hobo Angel, and I wrote it for my granddaughter, who drew pictures for it when I read it to her, when she read it. And this story gave me a chance to talk with her about the Depression, hobos, and how my parents had helped other people when I was growing up in Granite City, Illinois, which is a steel mill town just across the Mississippi River. Okay, now? Okay, which is a steel mill town just across the Mississippi River from St. Louis. Hobo Ben was allowed to return to Earth whenever a call came through for help. One day he heard such a call from the Miller home. At first he paid no attention to the call and plopped on the nearest cloud with a sigh. He had already made 2 trips to Earth on help calls that morning, and there was another one already. It was faint, though, so he hoped to rest for a while. He was glad his pal Little Frankie hadn't been on the spot to greet him. Sometimes Little Frankie could be a real pest, always wanting to play and asking what Hobo Ben had brought him for a help call. He was sure that Little Frankie would show up soon, but in the meantime Hobo Ben needed a nap. He tossed his scruffy old hat to one side and dozed off. Memories of life as a carefree hobo riding trains across the countryside infiltrated his dreams. One day he had been standing beside a line of boxcars just as the engine started up. Suddenly several men ran out from some woods and started climbing up on the trains. "Come on," one of them yelled out. Before he could think about it, that's just what Ben did. He scrambled up the ladder at the end of one of the boxcars and joined others who were sitting on top. They all waved to people as the train started going faster and faster and sped off into the distance. That's how Ben became a hobo and traveled back and forth across the country, sometimes on top of boxcars, sometimes sleeping inside the empty ones. When the train stopped, though, the hobos had to jump off quickly, since the owners did not like for hobos riding their trains. Hobo Ben stopped and worked for a while when he needed money. Sometimes he got greasy in oil fields, bloody in meat-packing plants, steamy in steel mills, sweaty on farms, or cool and wet on riverboats. There were times when he could not find a job and got so hungry that he begged for food. Most people ran him away. Others, like the Millers, gave him something to eat even when they had little to spare. One day, Hobo Ben had been standing near the open door of a boxcar when the train suddenly lurched as the boxcar shifted on the tracks. Hobo Ben lost his balance and was thrown from the boxcar down an embankment. That's all Hobo Ben remembered until he found himself in another place, sitting on a fluffy cloud. "Hi," a child's voice whispered in his ear. "Let's play." It was little Frankie, tapping Hobo Ben on the shoulder and waking him from his dream. "Let's play tag, you're it." The call from Earth was coming through stronger and stronger. It was the Millers, those folks who fed him over the years. "Can't now," Ben answered. "Must go find out what I need to do. See you later." Little Frankie stood sulking while Hobo Ben brushed himself off, straightened his tattered hat, and was soon off on his journey to Earth. Hobo Ben landed at 1740 Edison Avenue, but was surprised to find that that he was in an empty parking lot. Oh dear, he moaned. The rows of small frame mill houses that once lined the narrow street had disappeared. Steel mills surrounding the town were empty and desolate. The trains that Hobo Ben used to ride were gone. He looked around at the empty lot where he had once sat on the back porch of the Miller home and eaten so many Sunday morning meals before he hopped a freight train to Chicago or Detroit or wherever the trains were going. His mind ticked back to memories of that fine family. The Millers had 5 children. Their father, Frank, spent long hours working in the mills. Although their mother, Dorothy, worked in a sewing factory, she never failed to feed the hobos who passed by on Sunday morning. She always cooked extra helpings of potatoes slathered in rich brown gravy. Always there was a sugar cookie on the plates. Sometimes there were 3 or 4 hobos, sometimes just Ben. Once he heard little Frankie ask his mother, "Why do we feed the hobos? Nobody else does." "Hush, child," she answered. "That's why we feed them, because nobody else does. Besides, they might be an angel in disguise." One Sunday morning when Ben was gulping down a mouthful of potatoes, little Frankie tiptoed up behind him and whispered, "Are you a hobo angel?" Before the startled Ben could answer, Dorothy made little Frankie go in the house. Standing on the empty lot, suddenly Hobo Ben remembered what had happened to the family. The children grew up and moved away except for little Frankie, who never recovered from rheumatic fever and was Hobo Ben's friend in another place. There had not been enough money for little Frankie to get proper medical care. Frank and Dorothy were old now and lived on the outskirts of town. Frank had trouble walking. Dorothy had lost most of her eyesight. "Oh," Ben exclaimed to himself, "that's why I'm here. They need me. I must go to them quickly." Lights twinkled on as snow began falling in the evening twilight. It wasn't long before Ben found the Miller home, a small white A-frame house nestled among a group of oak trees just off the main road. Frank lay sprawled at the side of the house, trying to stretch far enough to reach his cane that lay several feet in front of him. Just as Frank lay down his head in near exhaustion, Hobo Ben pushed the cane toward him. "Well, I'll be," Frank muttered. He grasped the cane and struggled to get up, but couldn't. Yes, you can," Hobo Ben whispered in his ear, and with that he gave a push until Frank stood upright. "Well, I'll just be," Frank gasped, looking around. Once inside, he told Dorothy, "It felt like somebody lifted me up." "You sure you didn't hit your head?" she chuckled. Frank said he had to go sit in his chair and think about what happened. Dorothy stayed in the kitchen. Sadly, she wished that she could see well enough to make sugar cookies for the grandchildren who were coming to visit soon. Yes, you can," Hobo Ben whispered in her ear. With that, the oven clicked on. Dorothy had before her butter, sugar, milk, flour, and vanilla flavoring. It was as though someone was guiding her hands, and in no time she had a dozen cookies cooling. She was on her second batch when Frank came in wondering if he didn't smell sugar cookies. "And you ate some while my back was turned, didn't you?" she laughed, feeling that 2 were missing from the cooling rack. "How could I eat any?" Frank exclaimed, clutching his cane. "I just came in here, and what's this tattered old hat doing here, anyway?" "Oh, dear," said Hobo Ben, feeling the top of his head as he left Earth. "I forgot my hat. But maybe it's a fair exchange," she smiled, gently holding the 2 cookies in his hand, one for himself and one for little Frankie. And this is what my granddaughter drew, what she thinks Hobo Ben looked like, so I'll just pass it around. I have several, but that's for one.
How old is she?
Now she's 10. She was 8 when she drew that.
All right, that's 2 readers. We had Bernie and Lori. Let's see who the 3rd reader is going to be tonight. Make sure to stir them around really well and make sure this is very fair and judicious. And all right, that's pretty good and stirred. Lori G. Let me pick another one here. Lori G. I must have hit the Lori G gold mine here. No. I don't think that'd be fair. I might read one sometime just to read it. Dan Bain. There you go.
Stacy, if I ask a couple of questions first, does that count against my 10 minutes? Or, first of all, are there any Carolina fans here tonight? Do you happen to know how the game ended?
31, you won.
We won? Okay, well, I will not stand up here in exultation or boastfulness, but I was curious. That's how dedicated I was, Stacy. I left the house and it was 20-17 with a quarter left. So. Another quick question. How many people here are parents of young children or have been in the past? Still trying to decide which piece to read. I think I will go with one that I call Separation Anxiety, and this is something that I wrote just a couple weeks ago in nightly installments. All of this is a true story, and I may not get through it in 10 minutes, so please give me the high sign, Stacy, and I'll be glad to cut myself off. My wife left me yesterday. Don't worry, though. She'll come crawling back just like always. That's how tired she typically is after a long business trip. What did you think I was talking about? She flew out early yesterday afternoon for a 2-week training session in Peoria, Illinois, leaving me with a couple of things to handle. Thing one is a charming but precocious, preternaturally smart 7-year-old with a penchant for stalling and losing focus on the world around him as he brings it all to bear on some fascinating fact in an almanac or something shiny. Thing two is a deceptively cute, street-smart 3-year-old who reveals an evil glint in his eyes whenever he smiles at me and who has an appetite for sugar and destruction. For 10 business days, my mission is to wake them, dress them, feed them, drop them off, go to work, pick them up, feed them, bathe them, dress them, and get them to bed. It might not sound so bad, but with my wife out of town, you have to understand. The total parental manpower in this household has been reduced by a good 75%. She knows it too. She prearranged as much as she possibly could to make the job easier for me. Part of me wanted to be offended by the patronizing aspect of that, but most of me was grateful. I have to say, though, that it reminded me of those weeks during high school when Mom and Dad had to leave town and they sort of trusted me to take care of the place in their absence. Mom would stack the freezer with pre-cooked meals in order by weekday with a menu and cooking instructions taped to the front of the freezer door. Dad would leave a note along the lines of, no parties, no drinking, no girls. My wife did most of that, but forgot to forbid parties and girls. Either she knows she can trust me, or she knows I'll be too exhausted to misbehave. It starts with breakfast. For whatever reason, our boys are hooked on instant grits. I don't know who introduced them to instant grits, but I'd sure like to have a conversation with that person now. I hate instant grits. Not their taste, but their very presence. They are impossible to clean up, and if left unchecked, will multiply like tribbles. When thing two is finished with his breakfast, he has grits down his shirt, up his nose, on the table, on the floor, on his sleeves, on the cat, in his lap, in his shoes, in his hair, and between his fingers. And every attempt to clean them simply relocates the mess from one spot to another. You can't get rid of them. They are one of the few things in our house that will make me cuss like my dad. But the boys love them, and it does provide them with a warm, nutritional breakfast that's not packed with sugar. So my wife forbears and offers to handle feeding them and cleaning up breakfast each day. Doing so this week, however, would entail a fairly pesky commute, so she went to great lengths to help me avoid dealing with grits in her absence. It's called bribery. She told the boys they'd get to do special breakfasts over the next 2 weeks and let them pick out a variety of those round, allegedly single-serving containers of sugared cereal that you can find in the grocery stores. Lucky Charms, Apple Jacks, Frosted Flakes, Cheerios, and Frosted Mini-Wheats. A poor dentist's dream come true for a 5 drilling invoice. We figured I wouldn't have to deal with the grits, but I also wouldn't have to deal with the sugar highs. If they eat the cereal in the car, I can drop them off before the rush kicks in, and they're suddenly their teacher's problems. Thing 2 loved this idea. He was especially excited about the Apple Jacks, holding one of the containers and singing "Applejack, Applejack" as loudly as he could while he sat in the grocery cart Saturday. He wanted to open them immediately, but my wife explained they're for breakfasts after she goes to Peoria. She wasn't a minute out of our neighborhood yesterday afternoon when Thing 2 asked, "Daddy, Mommy gone to Peoria?" For a second, I felt sorry for him. I thought he was going to cry because he was already missing her. Instead, he shouted, "Yay! Now we have Applejack!" "No, Sugar Bear, those aren't for a snack. Those are for breakfast." "Then I want breakfast now." "No, breakfast is for morning." "Then I want Applejack for snack." "Oh, look, it's the Wii. Have I shown you how to play that yet?" I was proud of myself for the rest of the day, having distracted him with a video babysitter and addressing the issue whenever he remembered to bring it up. It takes a firm stance and insistence that Apple Jacks are not a good snack. They are for a specific meal. Unfortunately, that meal turned out to be dinner. The boys enjoyed it, though, and were more than cooperative for the rest of the night. Once I had them in bed, I set about planning this morning's routine, only to discover that she'd left precious little to plan. There was a box of pull-ups, spare Diego underwear, and car snacks in the passenger seat. Thing 1's backpack already had a week's worth of morning snacks packed in its pocket, and there was a sticky note reminding me to pack the perishable lunch items that she couldn't pack in advance. I shook my head and smiled to myself as I put the backpack down and returned the unneeded Monday snack I was holding back to the pantry. I was closing the pantry door when something caught my eye. There were still 5 days' worth of cereal cups on the shelf. After I'd caved on the Apple Jacks for dinner, I'd resigned myself to the inevitable grit war that I would have to wage on one of the mornings, since we'd used up one cereal allotment per thing. But there, among the neatly stacked microwavable dinners arranged by preferred date, I spotted another pair of cereal cups. Apple Jacks. I halfway expected to see a note from her along the lines of, "No more caving." Day 2. First full day on my own, and my sanity is no worse than it was before. We managed a grit-free breakfast thanks to those 10 remaining cereal cups. This morning, the call was for Lucky Charms, which of course means Thing 2 picked out and ate all the marshmallow bits from the top of his cup before declaring he was finished. But I knew he wouldn't go hungry since his daycare provides a real breakfast. His weekday morning meal at home is more like a pre-breakfast snack. Thing 1 doesn't get breakfast at school, so I had to do a better job with his breakfast and make sure he ate enough to get through the morning. To that end, I told him to eat all of the marshmallow bits, not just the ones on top. I also discovered why my wife wants the television turned off every weekday morning. Watching it is counterproductive, as Blue's Clues is a distraction from eating. But I still managed to wolf something down during a commercial break. The drive to school started with the boys arguing over what song I should play on my iPod. Each has a current favorite, based on its intro. They both love count-ins. Thing 2 enjoys Paul McCartney's spirited 1, 2, 3, 4 from I Saw Her Standing There, and requests it ad nauseum. He rarely waits for the song to end before requesting it again. In fact, he rarely waits for the first verse to begin before asking me to start the song over. So it's no surprise that he barely said, "Pay the Beatles, 1, 2, 3, 4, before Thing 1 began to loudly voice his objection. He knows Spanish and enjoys shouting out "Hola" and "Donde está" during the chorus of U2's Vertigo. He also thinks it's hilarious that Bono said 14 instead of 4 during the count-in, so he regularly requests that song that starts off "Unos, dos, tres, catorce." But as soon as he made this alternate suggestion, the screaming match was on. I tried for a compromise, but my suggestion of the Wiggles was met with further screaming. Frantically turning the click wheel to find anything that might silence both screamers, I failed to notice the brake lights ahead of me in a timely manner. I looked up in time to prevent an accident, but only at the cost of several skid marks, both inside the car and out, and an airborne iPod. I couldn't reach it under the dashboard, so we made the rest of the drive with no count-ins. I did, however, get my wish. The arguing stopped immediately. Then, for the rest of the drive, there was even some sibling cooperation evident. Amazing how they can put aside their differences for the sake of a unified show of criticism of Daddy's poor driving skills. Day 3. Breakfast rations are dwindling, and I fear I'll have to break out the dreaded grits by week's end. My little serial killer continues to ravage the pantry, despite my continued insistence that the individual servings are not a sustainable resource. To get more would entail shopping. I can't shop while they're in school because I have to work. And I can't shop at night because I'd rather feed them lint than take them into a grocery store by myself. I'd be outnumbered, and my zone defense is not that good. Hence, the cereal must last. This was supposed to have been Mini-Wheats Day. Part of my wife's pre-departure counseling was never give either son a chance to claim that the other is receiving preferential treatment. Anything other than strict adherence to these guidelines may result in sheer chaos and a complete breakdown of familial infrastructure. To that end, they are to be given the same thing during one seating, the same size portions of the same type of product made by the same brand with the same size, shape, and color of auxiliary utensils. As is a servant's tradition, I am to eat in separate quarters at a separate time. Quite simply, one brother may not have milk in a blue cup if the other has juice in a red cup, or if Daddy has amber liquid in a clear bottle. And so I announced to both of them that they would be having frosted mini-wheats, which was met with much rejoicing, until Thing 2 tried some. Daddy, I don't like these. That's all we have, Sugar Bear. I saw Yucky Charms in there. He pointed an accusing finger at the pantry door. Busted, and sensing an addiction-fueled tantrum of monumental proportions, I lapsed into bargaining mode. Some people consider bargaining to be a parent's biggest mistake, but it can be a necessity when time doesn't allow for kicking and screaming, and I didn't have time to engage in either of those activities. There are people who will tell you it's a sign of weakness to let a crying child have his way. They will insist that a screaming, pitching, reeling toddler can be brought into instant submission with a quick swat. They will swear that every time a child wins, an angel loses its wings. There's a word for people who tell you these things: childless. The unfortunate truth is that sometimes parenting requires a firm stance, sometimes it requires skilled negotiation, and sometimes it requires a white flag. The critical element to this equation is knowing how to choose one's battles. With a scant 30 minutes until work was going to start, including 25 minutes of driving and drop-offs, I chose wisely. When I make such a choice, all I have to think about is the human skeleton, specifically joints. Joints make it possible for the human body to bend. Bending makes it possible for the human body to sit. Sitting is the only legal way to transport a human toddler's body. But when Sugar Bear has a tantrum, none of this is possible. He has this freaky ability to simultaneously and irrevocably lock every joint in his body. Once they are locked, nothing and no one can bend them again until Sugar Bear is good and ready for them to bend. His body goes completely rigid, stiff and straight as a 2x4. Have you ever tried to strap a 2x4 into a booster seat in the back of a car? I have, and it's a painful memory. But it's a memory that came back to me while I was watching a tantrum about to unfold at the same time I was watching the clock. Same with us. Snap decision, the kid wins this time and everybody's happy. There's no rule saying I can't punish him later. That's what bedtime ghost stories are for, isn't it? Decision made, addiction fed, and chaos abated, I turned to his brother to make sure I hadn't just invited further trouble by offering them different menus. Doodlebug, I'm giving your brother tomorrow's Junky Charms, but there's still a cup left for you. He'll have to eat something else tomorrow, possibly lint. Junky Charms? Don't you mean Lucky Charms, Dad? No, son. No, I don't. But what does junky mean? Ask your mother. But she's not here. Did you forget she's in Peoria? No, son. No, I didn't.
And that reader is going to be, looks like Inspired to Be.
Then I was nervous because all these short story writers came up and they were pretty good. So I was like, okay. I write poetry, so I'm going to spit a few poetry to you. This first poem is called Never Ending. Inspired to be, not inspired by this idealistic world that's embedded in the minds of the young. Journey from the brains of an unknown and placed into a society completely opposite of its kind. Only to be duplicated repeatedly by this sightless world, this meaningless gesture that was designed to corrupt the people's way of thinking. An unlawful entry into this cycle to close the gaps and keep us bound forevermore. Placing our thoughts under arrest for a crime not known to be committed by man alone. But yet we suffer. And then blame for the mishaps of others. And as our eyes roll to the back of our heads, we picture these thoughts as if they have already been mastered. But disaster is upon us, and we can no longer turn reality to a dream of nightmares that we will soon wake up from. And even though we feel the pain this world is feeling, we toss it back to the unforgettable place in the back of our minds, trying to avoid the situation as if it's no big deal, but still. About 20 years down the road, we see the same situation and think, dang. Thinking that you've learned your lesson and you think that it's a blessing to have gone through. But never in your life did you think that it would come back like a boomerang and haunt you. It's funny how life can be that way. Knowing that you faced that level before, it comes back with the same game to play. And even though you feel that it starts the beginning, life will always be never ending. I guess I'll do, I think I'm in love. Go to a softer side. I think I'm in love. Now don't get excited because I'm not too sure, but it feels like it. I mean, I have this warm sensation flowing through me, making me happy, making me smile. Now isn't that what love's supposed to do? I wake up in the morning with thoughts of him, wanting him to be the first that I talk to, waiting for his call so I can hear his voice, look for him to come around so I can sniff his cologne, feel to see if his skin got any softer since the last time I touched him. Now, if that ain't love, then I don't know what is. See, every time my phone rings, the butterflies in my stomach starts to dance and the cheekbones on my face start to rise. I think I have that high school love. You know, when you can wake up, be on the phone for hours talking about nothing. Just the fact that you can hear them breathing is all that matters to you. When all you want to do is hold them next to you. And saying goodbye is something that is so hard to do. That is what this man is taking me through. Now, I don't want to jump ahead of myself. I really care about this man. He makes me feel good inside. He doesn't seem to hold any secrets, nothing from me he has to hide, so love must be the reason. Now, no matter how bad I want to believe it, I still have my doubts. See, I think I'm in love, but don't get excited right now. I am not too sure. But it feels like it, though. I mean, I have the hairs on my arms stand up as if I have goosebumps, bringing chills to my body. My heart melts every time he looks into my eyes, and when he touches me, gosh, I feel as though his all harm is gone. Now, love has a funny way of showing the signs. My possession of laughter is what he gives me. Every time he comes around, it seems as though he feels me. I love to be in his presence. Even if no plans presents itself for that day, I don't mind sitting around doing nothing as long as he's there. Although his snoring is kind of loud, it's kind of cute too. Watching him sleep leaves me pleased, and when I say, baby, are you awake? He slowly lifts his head as he takes the back of his hands and wipes the moisture from the corners of his mouth. All right. I know what you're thinking. But I have to approach this in a rational manner, can't rush into things. See, it seems as though I'm in love, but don't get excited right now. I am not too sure. But it feels like it could be true. A remedy to my illness you are. The gloom and illumination at the end of the tunnel I saw. Bright rays of your touch to my inspired core from which oxygen flows through. Changing this color from red to purple, conducting my feelings as an orchestra so true. Indeed, you are the essence that soothes my thoughts I have. Some control of the chaos that surrounds me I feel. Certainty of your path to cure the inconsistent rhythm that plays repeatedly in my physical structure. Exposing the anguish in me as a mere amateur, I know that the substance offered has many flavors I want. My biography to exist only in the presence of your emotions, brought on by the commotion of this life form, balanced to keep it from becoming a life torn. For me, poetry is my therapy. And then this is my last one, y'all. This last one is called I Speak Life. I speak about the many untold stories, not just the ones that came before me, but also the ones we can presently see. I speak to remind you where you came from so you can know where you're going and no one can be able to stop you. I speak of the good times, the bad times, the mean times, and the between times, helping you clear your head so you can find time to achieve your goals, to find ways to take control of your life, of the situations laid before you, to find solutions that only you knew. So I speak for those who can't speak for themselves, who rather place their hearts on the back of a shelf, for those who can't find words to fit the verse for the subjects that they heard, for the topics that are so absurd. I raise my voice because no one is going to allow me to, so I made it my choice. I chose to take this life without parole conviction, charged with possession of this drug addiction, pleading guilty to speak on your inflictions. So when I step up to the mic, understand that it's not just for my advancement, nor is telling your business to the world my intent. I take the time to write the lines to relieve some of your stripes, so for you, I speak life. Thank you.
Awesome. That was Inspired to Be. Thank you. All right. I think we're up. Is this fifth reader or is this the sixth one? Anybody want to put a couple more names into the pot since we're up to our sixth one? All right. Our sixth reader tonight is going to be. I'm stirring them up real well. All right. The sixth reader tonight is going to be Peggy. There you go.
Boy, I don't know if I want to follow you. That was just wonderful. Thank you.
I do need to pass around the sign-in sheet if you would. Great. It's all yours.
Thank you. I've moved here the last couple years from the Four Corners area, so the poetry that I picked tonight is based on my love of that area. And I usually write motivational and inspirational poetry, and I will be reading some of that. But the first poem has to do with an episode that happened exactly 10 years ago out in that area. And I just happened to be there again, and it was in all the newspapers, an update. And so I knew some of the principles in this, and I'd like to share that one with you first. And it's called Our Own. Headlines rang loudly like a shot in the calm. News resounded throughout counties and towns. No one hadn't heard of the episode. Everyone was alerted to the fact of the killing. Been a day of pure sunlight, one of the locals took for granted, as it bathed winter-pale skin in both warmth and in light. In a place of unusual beauty and usual safety, where we chose to reside. But as quick as the split second it takes for the pull of a trigger, a chill descended on our town as we heard the news about our own. 3 young'uns, barely men, 2 of our own, cut short a lawman's life. Family man, 18 bullets, 2 more wounded. All for the taking of water. That's what they say, water, not for drinking, nor bathing, nor for healing. An old water truck, all out of greed, all for the ramming of a Brinks truck, for the money. Who knows? Their coach, he cried, and the teachers, they did weep, and the mamas and the daddies be brought to their knees. How could they be our own, they cried out. No one's got a clue. A boy manhunt ensued for our own in ranching country, next to where cattle plains meet the canyon on the brink of Red Rock, where there's beauty and there's hiding. On a day so bright we could hardly see what we were doing or thinking. In Bluff, Utah, that be, another lawman gunned down by our own. So we sit around asking who's to blame, where'd we go wrong? The citizenry try to reflect. Everyone's a speculating and shaking heads, but no one really has a clue. The coach, he cries, and the teachers weep. The mamas and the daddies lay prostrate. And we're a-wishing it'd all just go away, for we can't take it all in. 'Cause now we gotta make hide and we gotta make hair of a very grave situation. We gotta make changes and we gotta, hold on, special news bulletin breaking in. One of our own found shot to death by his very own hand. Oh Lordy, one of our own, one-man child. Other two out there somewhere. They be hiding deep in those canyons. Now all the heads they hang low, and we're guessing again, trying to make heads and we're trying to make hair of a very bad situation. But it's all just too much sadness. So the coach, he cries, and the teachers be weeping, and oh, all the mamas and the daddies holding on tighter to their babies. They be saying, this won't ever be happening again to one of our own, and no one really has a clue. Okay, regrouping where I feel a little more comfortable. So I like to go out to the canyons a lot. I'm an artist and a writer, and that's where I really get so inspired. And I'm also very, very concerned about this beautiful earth of ours. So this is called Mother Earth. As I sit on my warm red rock, a sentinel to all that is below and above me, I am Anasazi. I am Hopi. I am Navajo. I am Coyote. I am the flicker. I am the lizard. I am the mesas and the proud buttes, the dry riverbeds, and I am the canyons. I am pinon, I am cedar, and I am the sage. I am the autumn golden cottonwood, and I am the burnished chamisa. I am me, the one who is connected to all here in Canyon Country. So treat me well. Give to me your dignity, your respect, your love. Embrace me and feel our birthright connection. Know that I have no expectations beyond this. I am Mother Earth. I will nurture you in ways that are vital, ways that are sacred. I will embrace you with loving arms, enfolding, erasing all pain, comforting your wounded heart, retrieving your soul. Just listen to my heartbeat, the rhythm of the canyon symphony, the music of rebirth. Then rejoice. You are home, my son. You have returned, my daughter. Thank you. Thanks. And following that, Canyon Reunion. I have returned to the canyons like a prodigal daughter whose journey took her far from her soul. A perfect journey, one of retrieval and rebirthing, one in search of what had been lost or at least forgotten. There are times when we need to remove ourselves from those and that which is most comfortable, most familiar. To distance ourselves from the mirror that only reflects back to us what we most desire, or reflect only that which we want to see. So we must contract for the while that it takes to see what is really within, to listen, to be still, to be angry, to be sad, to grieve, to be forgiving, to be far from that place that would only enable us, embrace us, and possibly shield us from our reconnected life. The light may dim, but the passion holds on, if only a flicker, enough for reignition. So for the recharge, I've returned to the canyons, my arms open wide to all that they may embrace. I hold that mirror and welcome all that it may reflect as I reflect. It is time, and time has stood still on the mesas, the riverbeds, the petroglyph walls in the canyon. My rebirthing begins, my passion, more than a flicker. Its fire reflecting on the rock cathedral walls, my soul is reconnected, and I, the prodigal, have worthily returned home. Thank you. And the last one, again, I was standing up kind of doing some Tai Chi, very high up on this precipice, and at that very moment, this beautiful red-tailed hawk came flying by. And I was in such a state that I literally felt that I had morphed into the red-tailed hawk. So this is called precipice. I'm a red-tailed hawk. I'm on top of the world standing on this precipice. It's been a really long journey, and I've traveled by foot. There's been weariness, and then there's been fear. But now I'm feeling free because I've made it here. I know it's my turn to fly. I need only to leap. There's no dread of falling. The drop's not so steep. I imagine the flight. I'm a red-tailed hawk, so outspread my wings as I step off my rock. I soar and I sail and I float overhead. There's nothing can touch me or fill me with dread. This journey's been worth it. I'll fly evermore. I'm a red-tailed hawk and I know what I'm here for. To dance and to sing and to fly with the best. And every so often, take a break in my nest. I'm a red-tailed hawk and I'm sailing on wing. I'll continue to fly and forever I'll sing. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for coming tonight. The next phase here is the voting process. So what I'll do is I'll pass out these blue slips. Let me. Can we buy extras of those too? If you've got some extra money, I might actually sell you some extra of those. No, these are free. We had some real talent in the room tonight. You know, it's a lot of fun to see what kind of local talent that we have in the area, and I feel honored to be a part of this open mic night, and thank you all for coming tonight. So what I'll do is I'll pass these out. I see that we have Virginia Freeman from the North Carolina Writers Network. Once I take these up, I'm going to count them to see who the winner is, and then I think Virginia's going to do a small presentation on the fall conference at the North Carolina Writers Network while I'm counting those. Again, the readers tonight, help me again. The first one was Bernie, right? The second reader was Lori. The third reader was Dan. The fourth reader was Linda, right? Or Ranter, as the case may be, was Linda. Then Inspired to Be was our fifth reader, and then the sixth reader was Peggy. So those are the readers tonight. There were two standouts, like I said. One had 13 votes and the other had 7 votes. The reader with 7 votes was Dan. Congratulations. And then the reader with 13 votes was Inspired to Be. Great job. So come on up and accept your prize if you would. Thank you very much. It was wonderful poetry. And I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. There is a poetry slam if you could make it down to the poorhouse between 8 and 9 p.m. tonight at Moore Square, which you guys are all invited to come to as well. If you haven't signed the sign-in sheet, that's the way I communicate with everybody about what events we have coming up. I'll be around to answer some questions afterwards if you want to chat a little bit. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, Stacey.